You know, in modern history, you'd be hard-pressed to find a leader as dominant, as divisive, and frankly, as resilient as Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu. We're talking about Israel's longest-serving prime minister, a man whose entire career has been one long story of controversy, conflict, and comeback after comeback.
Okay, so that's really the big question we're tackling, isn't it? How does he do it? Think about it. From corruption trials to catastrophic security failures, Netanyahu has stared down crises that would have been career enders for anyone else. So what's his secret? How has he managed to not just hang on, but to keep coming back to power again and again?
To really get a handle on Netanyahu the politician, you have to start with the man, his worldview, that incredible drive. It was all shaped long before he ever set foot in office. It was forged in the fire of his family's beliefs and in the heat of military conflict.
Now look at this timeline, because these 4 points are basically the building blocks for everything that follows. He's born in Israel to a really ideological family, right? But then he spends his teen years in Philadelphia. That's where he gets that flawless American accented English he's so famous for. He comes back, serves in Sayeret Markal, Israel's top special forces unit, and builds up his security bona fides. And then, the tragedy that defines his life, his older brother, his hero, Yoni, is killed leading the legendary raid on Entebbe. That loss became absolutely central to his entire public story, a cornerstone of his political identity. It cast him as someone who has paid the ultimate personal price for Israel's security.
So, with that background, he just explodes onto the political scene. His rise in the 1990s was incredibly fast, but as you're about to see, it was also incredibly rocky.
While he was at the United Nations, he got really good at TV, mastering the soundbite and becoming this familiar face defending Israel on the world stage. That was his launchpad into the Knesset, and from there he just shot up through the ranks of the Likud party. He grabbed the leadership by going all in against the Oslo Peace Accords, and in 1996, he rode this wave of public anxiety all the way to the top, becoming Israel's youngest prime minister ever.
But this is where the trouble started. See, despite campaigning so hard against giving up land, once he was prime minister, what did he do? He signed agreements with Yasser Arafat that did just that. And that created a huge problem for him. His own supporters on the right felt totally betrayed, but his opponents on the left, they just saw him as untrustworthy. His coalition fell apart, and by 1999, he was voted out. It really looked like his career was over.
So after that defeat, pretty much everyone wrote him off. They thought he was done. Well, they were wrong. He staged his first big comeback in 2009. And that kicked off a period of political dominance that would last for over a decade.
This right here, this was the core of his brand. He managed to sell himself as the guardian of Israeli security, the one guy, the only guy, who could protect Israel from all its enemies, especially from the threat of a nuclear Iran. That message, it became his political superpower. And during this long run as prime minister, you see a few key things happen. The peace process with the Palestinians basically grinds to a total halt. He famously clashes with President Obama over the Iran nuclear deal. He leads several major military operations in Gaza. And at the same time, he's dealing with massive protests at home over the cost of living. But through it all, he proved he was a master tactician, somehow piecing together coalition after coalition to stay in power. But then came a test that really seemed like it would be the end. A whole series of corruption investigations threatened to bring it all crashing down and kicked off one of the biggest political crises in Israel's history.
So in 2019, the bomb drops. Israel's attorney general moves to indict him on these really serious charges. This was huge. He became the first sitting Israeli prime minister ever to face a criminal trial. Now, it's really important to say he has denied any and all wrongdoing from the very beginning and has pleaded not guilty to all charges.
These legal problems just threw the entire political system into absolute chaos. Israel got stuck in this crazy cycle of one inconclusive election after another
For more than 2 years, the country was just paralyzed. They had election after election, get this, 5 elections in less than 4 years, and none of them could produce a stable government. Every vote basically became a referendum on just one person, Netanyahu himself.
Finally, in 2021, this incredibly strange bedfellows coalition, parties from the right, the center, the left, and Arab Party, they all banded together with literally one single goal: get Netanyahu out of office. And they did it. For the second time in his career, it looked like he was finished for good.
And yet, you know where this is going. He proved them all wrong, again. In November 2022, he pulls off another stunning comeback, leading a solid block of right-wing and religious parties to a clear victory and forming one of the most right-wing governments Israel has ever seen.
Which brings us right up to today, to his current term in office. And this one has been defined by back-to-back crises that have shaken the country to its very core, putting his legendary survival skills to the ultimate test. So he gets back into power and almost immediately pushes this massive plan to overhaul the country's judiciary. Well, that sparked months of the biggest protests in Israel's history. It split the nation right down the middle, a kind of ideological civil war between those who saw it as a danger to democracy and those who thought it was a much-needed reform.
And then, while the country was already being torn apart from the inside, the unthinkable happened. The single deadliest day in Israel's history. On October 7, 2023, Hamas launched a horrific surprise attack from Gaza. Around 1,200 people were killed, and hundreds more were dragged away as hostages. For a leader who had built his entire career, his entire brand, on being Mr. Security, this was just a catastrophic, unimaginable failure. His approval ratings absolutely tanked, as many Israelis blamed his government for being caught so completely off guard. And that's pretty much where things are now. He's juggling an ongoing war, he's facing potential arrest warrants from the International Criminal Court, his corruption trial is still going on, and he is under just immense, crushing public pressure to bring the remaining hostages home. His entire legacy is hanging in the balance.
So, how will history remember Benjamin Netanyahu? As the ultimate political survivor? As the guardian who, for decades, kept Israel safe? Or as a deeply polarizing figure who fractured his own country? To his supporters, he's the indispensable protector. To his critics, he's a threat to the very democratic institutions he leads. The final chapter hasn't been written yet, but one thing is for sure. You'll be hard-pressed to find another leader who so completely embodies the conflicts, the divisions, and the sheer, stubborn resilience of a nation.